Hey friends, it's Kevin Dairaghi. Welcome to the Kevin Dairaghi Show. Today, my guest is Craig Fuhr. So, Craig is one of those guys who's been a mentor and a coach and just kind of a friend in the industry, right? So he's from Maryland, so he's like out in the Baltimore area, and here I am in St. Louis. But a lot of our lives and our experiences are very similar in kind of the directions and kind of growth that it has gone. Getting into public speaking, doing some coaching, doing houses. He had some early success, whether that's a blessing or a curse, but it is one of those, like, what happens as you evolve, right? Those good days, the bad days, and what do you do with it? Some of what he talks about is like the PTSD that comes from being in an industry like this, right? It could beat you down, any of these things. If you think you're just by yourself, or dude, that's really, really crushing, and how important it is to have faith and healthy habits and also a good and loving spouse. So, guys, let's jump into the conversation with Craig right now. All right. Hi, everybody. I am super excited today. Today, I get to have a longtime friend, a coach, a mentor, somebody who has really spoken into me, that we've been in masterminds and all this stuff. So I'm so happy to have you, Mr. Craig Fuhr. Hi, Craig. How you doing?
Dude, it's been a while and it's great to see you. I was excited when you reached out. A little busy, so I'll demur to my one-word answers back to you. But no, I was very excited to come on the show. Good to see you.
Awesome. Yeah. So, you have this incredible line of success in real estate. You've done coaching. Now you help people on the money side of it. And you also have a top 10% worldwide podcast called Real Investor Radio. So realinvestorradio.com. Welcome, welcome.
Yes, thank you. It's illustrious indeed. Yeah, man.
So I have to ask, all these wonderful titles, all this cool stuff that you've done, right? How did you get started? Did, like, you left high school? Did you go to college? Did you start a company? What was your path looking like?
Well, there was no entrepreneur in my family, prior to me, and I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's not as if I had you know, um, a lot of mentoring as I was growing up to sort of create that entrepreneurial spirit. But I think there was something in me, man, when I got out of college with a marketing degree and owned a few businesses. I I was always sort of tangentially interested in real estate. My dad worked for General Motors. He was a pipe fitter. And in the early 80s, he decided he was going to build a house down in Bethany Beach, Delaware. And I just was able to watch him do that and sort of, and he built the whole thing himself with his,
Like
with his
his own
apprentice
hands
buddies.
type build it, or
No, man, he built it himself, like with his own hands. It was pretty cool. But like as he was doing that, he would take me around to some of these other McMansions that were being built around us. And ours was like this, it was like a rancher on stilts. And then all these other massive houses going up. And he's, I think my dad was suffering from a little bit of I don't know what the word I'm looking for there, like a little anxiety that his house wasn't like all of those. But we would walk through these houses and I was fascinated with the framing and the flooring and the all the finishes and even the mechanicals. I don't know why I found it to be so fascinating. Even so I would do it all the time with him. We would just go into communities and just walk around. And then he built a couple more houses after that. And this guy who worked for General Motors for 35 years died a millionaire because he just bought low, held on to the house for a little bit, and then went and built another one and lived in that one for a little bit. And the market was rising. And so, I think by the time my dad was like 50 years old, he didn't even have a mortgage on a brand new house that they built then
dang.
in Pennsylvania. So I remember, so he died, he was diagnosed with lung cancer, and we were just sitting around one day chatting and having a couple cigars. I'll never forget, I gave my dad a cigar while he had lung cancer. He was like, "What's it going to do? Kill me?"
Jeez.
And so we're having a cigar, and I got a chance to ask him, like, how are things monetarily right now? And he's like, "Craig, I can't spend all the money that comes in every month between the pension from General Motors and my stepmother's pension from the state." He's like, we don't even spend that much, less all the money that we've got in, retirement. And he's like, we never touch it. I can't even spend what I've got, what comes in the mailbox every month, much less, what I've got saved that's still growing in retirement. So I found that to be fascinating. And I got out of college, worked a few jobs, owned a bar for a minute. And then I went to work for the government, believe it or not. If you can,
You go from bar to government?
you cannot even imagine a worse person going to work as a GS employee at the IRS than Craig Fuhr. Like, I was such a fish out of, like, I would just look around and see the inefficiencies and it would just hurt my heart. So I kept hearing these commercials on the radio back then. This is the early 2000s for, hey, come to our, Thursday session. It was this local company in Baltimore. And I went, listened to the spiel. I think it was like 13 grand to sign up. I gave them like 6,500. And I was like, if I do a deal, and they were like, that's not the way it works. And I was like, well, that's the way it's going to work with me. If you want me to be a student here, it's 6,500 bucks. We'll do a couple deals. You'll get paid. Everybody will be happy. So they said yes. And I learned how to do marketing, direct mail marketing. Phone starts ringing off the hook. And I find this condo, like a 3-story condo townhouse. This is in 2003 or four, and shake the hand of the tired landlord and go home to see this girl that I was seeing at the time. And I was like, holy crap. I don't know what I just did here, because I signed a contract for 125 grand on this house. And I don't have the money for it. Like, I don't have there's barely a dime to my name. And she was like, well, just go ask my father. He'll do the deal with you. And I was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Cause like, if I've got to go to like Christmas dinner and I mess this thing up, can't do it. And she was like, nah, it sounds like a great deal. And I was like, okay. So it was 125 purchase. We knew we'd have to put like 25 grand into it, like lipstick on a pig thing. I go to tell the guy, her father, the deal. And before I could even get out the entire like spiel, he was like, yeah, I'll put up all the money. You do all the work. We'll split the profits 50-50. And I was like, that's the greatest deal ever, right? I don't have a penny of my own in this thing. So 90 days, almost to the day, we finished the thing. And I literally net profit in pocket. Total net was $98,000, close to $99,000 net profit on this thing. We sold it off market, stuck a sign in the lawn. And the thing that I always enjoy talking, I love telling that story, is because I made 98,000 and I married the girl. And that was 22 years ago. It's hard to imagine, but
oh my gosh.
But it's funny. I've been looking for that deal ever since. That was just one of those grand slam out of the park. Market was taking off like a rocket. Needed 25 grand in work. It was basically patch paint, new cabinets, just trim. And we didn't even have to put it on the market. Sold in like 45 minutes and made $98,000 net profit. Paid for the wedding, paid for the ring, paid for the honeymoon, paid for, like, I'm now the golden child.
Yeah. Oh, Craig.
However,
oh, here comes the bud. Huh?
Yeah, the but is that, so I have my, father-in-law to be as a partner, and he's sort of retirement age, has done very well, different risk profile than me and for anyone who understood the market back then, I could throw a rock out of any window and go find a great deal. Maybe not that deal, but a great deal. I could walk into Baltimore City, throw a rock in any direction and find 5 or 6 houses that, even if I didn't do anything, the market was rising so quickly that, you could just sit on these things and the market was going up like 5, 6, 8% a month. And I would just keep taking like deal after deal after deal to my father-in-law. And he was like, oh, that's not like Trotting Ridge. I don't think we want to be in the city. I don't think our guys will go down there. And I was like, I think I need to find a new partner. And so I did. And that's when things really took off. And then, of course, we lived through 2008. And if I'm being honest, probably still have a little PTSD from that time. And the crazy thing is, Kevin, is, now I sit on the other side of the table as a loan officer. I work exclusively with investors all over the country in all 50 states, and builders and guys that are doing massive projects. And what I find is that so few of them have that sort of 2008 in their DNA, because they never lived through it. These are young guys. Most of them weren't investing at that time. It's so refreshing on our podcast when we talk to guys that are like, Yeah, man, that was a tough time. Like, yeah, that really like almost took me out. Or yeah, I was out and I had to figure out a way back in and build everything back up again. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey.
I think you are not even underlining this significantly enough. Like the PTSD of some of these deals, especially like seasons like that. Some people have it internally. Sometimes it's a market condition. Dude, like COVID was another one for a lot of us. Like for me, we're extroverted type people. We need people. We have live events. We do those things. You take that
Mhm.
out of us, like it makes you wonder, why am I here? What am I doing? Like, oh my gosh, like, am I any good anymore?
Yeah, I'm and look, man, if you want to get 100% real, just keep going with the trajectory there. So, did several deals between 2004 and 2008. The mark and did well on all of them. They were all flips, did great. Kind of had to figure out the whole contractor game. Probably had a few steal some money from me. All the
Par
learned
for the
a
course.
lot during those first few deals, just as anybody does. 2008 happens, and if you turn on the television every night, they would tell you, "Oh, no one's buying houses. The market's dead. It's a horrible time in the country." But what they weren't saying was when Obama came in and there was all these Obama bucks and grants and stuff like that for down payments. Man, I made more money between 2008 and 2012 than I had each year than I had made in all of the years prior combined. It was just so easy to find deals back then. They were on the MLS. You make 50 offers, you get two under contract. You do a couple short sales. We're still doing direct mail marketing at the time. The phone's ringing off the hook. And as long as you had, and this is a really important, something for people to put a pin in. That was a time where I got a call from my local bank that I did all of my deals with, and I even had some rentals by that time, like that 2009, 10. And I was doing loans, hard money loans with this bank, fix and flip loans, I should say. I had students that I would send their way. I had other investors, referrals. So they loved me. And I get a call one day from the vice president of the bank who I saw routinely. And he was like, "Hey, man, got some news." And I was like, "What's that?" And he goes, "We're out of the investor business." And I said, "Wait, when?" And he goes, "Right now." Like literally, it was like,
Yeah. Eight
yeah, we're
o'clock.
not gonna do one more loan together, right? Like it's over. And so, but that was happening. It's with small local banks all over the country. And so after the GFC in 2008, if you didn't have access to cash and equity, you weren't going to find debt. And so that was the beauty of having a better network back then. I was networked in a mastermind with some really good guys. They had access to capital. And as my experience started to grow after 2008, really doing 5, 6, 8, 10 projects at a time, I found that finding the capital was very easy, that because you had that track record, you had that experience. So I think that we're really coming into a time where, it's a very volatile world we live in right now. And I think if you're not lining up your equity right now, if you're not really getting the experience, becoming a much better operator, really honing your operations, finding better deals, understanding the three legs of real estate, which is capital, deals, and contractors, you're not going to be in the great position to capitalize on what could be the next downturn. So getting back to the story, so I'm doing a whole bunch of flips. We own a whole bunch of rentals. Probably had like 38 doors, like around 2009.
You said
And
we. Who's we?
it doesn't matter, just partners. And so the problem was is that I would make massive paydays on the flips, but then my partner in the rentals would call me up and go, "Hey, we're $10,000 short on mortgages or on our payments this month, or we're 5,000 short." And so the money was coming in one hand and going out the other. And I had these 3 4-unit buildings in a pretty seedy area in Baltimore City. And like one night right before Christmas, I had a buddy of mine call me and go, "Hey, I think you're on the news." And I was like, "What?" He goes,
Um,
"Yeah, turn on the news." And I got this like 35-foot sign going across like one of these 4 units that we had full gut rehab, bought them for 100 grand, put like 200,000 into them. These are big 4 units, like they were 1,500 square foot units, like 3-bedroom units. And I had 3 buildings with 4 units. So we had 2 of them complete, but we couldn't get them rented up. And then I get the call from my buddy, "You're on the news." There was a triple murder right
oh,
in front of my building. Now, that only compounded the issues because because what happened after the financial meltdown was there was a lot of these better properties that guys were trying to flip that were on the market, but they couldn't sell them. So like in better neighborhoods in Baltimore City and around town, you would find these beautiful rehabs, and anybody who had the golden Section 8 ticket could easily say, oh, I don't want to go live in the one with the triple murder. I'm just going to go live out like in a better neighborhood and raise my family there. I couldn't blame them. And so this went on for a couple years where we would go into that bank, once every 2-3 months, meet with the vice president, the president, and they would tell us how much they loved us and how much they were, we're the best, and that, keep making those payments. And when we get through this regulatory period and we don't have the feds up our butts, we'll help you out with that 7.5 or 7.75% loan on those rentals. We'll figure it out, guys. And we just kept hearing that time after time after time. And then finally it got to a point where my partner in the business was like, I got to pull the trigger. And he pulled a foreclosure. I didn't want the crap to roll down solely to me. So I pulled a foreclosure and was discharged. We had this is the great part. So we had $2 million of debt. Get out your number 2 pencil and write this one down. $2 million in debt on assets valued by the bank $600,000. So the market took a bit of a swing in the Baltimore area. So I'm sitting there going, okay, I'm going to pay off $2 million on assets valued at 600. When are they ever going to be worth 2 million or more? And frankly, if I'd have figured out a way to ride it out, probably been sitting pretty today, but that's a lot of brain damage between, then and figuring it out. And
Dude,
today,
that's a lot of bleeding.
It's a lot of brain damage.
That's a lot of bleeding to get to it.
And I can't, and so everyone in my circle back then was like, it'll be the best thing for you. Clean slate. You have all the experience. You can jump right back into the game, be better than ever without all this hanging over your head every month, which was true. But like what I found is that I felt like a total piece of crap. Like I'm not built that way. I didn't intend to like walk into my bank one day and say, I'm not going to pay you back. And so at the time, I really wasn't interested in getting back into doing it myself, though I knew I needed to. But I also had a whole bunch of students that were flipping houses as well, and figured it out over time. But it's been several years since I flipped a house or did any real estate on my side of the table. Several years. Want to get back into it. Kind of got the itch, but it's definitely been several years.
Really? Because I know when we were talking, I thought you were getting back into that.
I was. I got with a friend of mine who runs a direct mail company, is very well known in the industry, and she was like, "Hey, I'll send all the direct mail. You go on the appointments, get the houses under contract. We'll wholesale everything and make some money." And we did that for a minute. But I found, man, that like my heart just wasn't in it. I just felt like the industry is much different now, dude. Like if you started in 2004, it was very mom and pop. You could still walk up to a phone booth and see like, we buy houses. And
yeah, what's a phone booth?
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And you could throw out a couple signs, a couple bandit signs and send out, to some crappy list, and the phone would start ringing. And you'd walk, you'd go on the appointment, and I was actually pretty good at, speaking with people over the kitchen table. But man, I'll never forget like one of the last ones I went on after my whole, financial meltdown. I went on an appointment on a probate deal. And those were always the best, some grandmom dies, the house hasn't been updated since 1970. Everything's got pink this, pink that in the bathrooms. And the kids or whoever don't want it. Very easy, usually good margin in them. And the guy was like, "Hey, step into the kitchen here." It was like her son. And I was like, "Wow, okay, sure." And fanned out on the table, like a deck of cards, was all the letters and postcards. And he goes, "Guess how many that is?" And I was like, "How many?" And he goes, I said, "It's a lot." And he goes, 72. 72 postcards and letters that I've received in just a month and a half for this crappy house in Baltimore City. And that's when I realized that like the industry had really changed. It changed, man. There are a lot of much more sophisticated operators, people who understood the marketing aspect of the business and could get, and put together the money. It changed. And so if your heart's not in it and it's not something that you want to do, grind out on a daily basis, and you can't be like the first guy with a decent offer to the table, then the other more sophisticated operators in the area are going to beat you to every deal. And that has not gotten better. That's only gotten harder. Like now you can go into any city in America, any suburb in America, and there's going to be some guy like the guys who I work for at Dominion Properties. So I work now. I'm a loan officer at Dominion Financial Services, but there's the second arm of the company is Dominion Properties. They started the company in like 2004, one house in Baltimore, one hard money loan in Baltimore. And now they own about 1,000 units in the Baltimore metropolitan area. And we're doing $100 million a month in loans across, in all 50
A
states in the
month?
country a month. It's crazy, right? Like you want to talk about guys who grind. And these guys, had to go through 2008 too. But what they learned was, the sophisticated operator, the guys that are constantly tightening up, the operation and getting better are the guys who win. And so that's who you're competing with as a mom and pop in every single MSA in the country. And even those tangential markets as well. There's always going to be that guy who can get to that house. He's going to pick up the phone 24 hours a day, and he's going to get to that house the very next day to make those people an offer. And even though it might not get accepted, if you're not there, if you didn't pick up the phone for one and you're there 5 days later, in this market, that deal's gone.
So you do talk a lot about marketing here. So let's go back to your easy to find days, right? You said you were good at marketing, you're getting the phone to ring. Like, what do you think was your special sauce for your marketing?
Well, it's funny. Like, I think back then it was this sort of like, hey, I'm not like some big corporate company. I'm not rolling up with like a logo on my shirt. It was very homespun. I'm just one of you. I'm just some guy who does a few deals a year, and it's going to be a win-win for everyone. That was the message. I can close fast. We'll meet across the kitchen table. I'll shake your hand, and sure enough, we're going to get this thing to the closing table. And I can't recall one deal where there was one deal where I backed out, and it was I walked into this house in Baltimore. It had very little roof, and it had been vacant for probably 15 years. So it was like a fish tank, just like the rain just pouring in. And he was like, yeah, we'll walk upstairs. It's fine up there. And as I'm walking up the steps to this house, to the upstairs, there's mushrooms growing out of the carpet. I was like, wow, those things can grow anywhere. That's amazing. Like literally mushrooms that were growing. And I said, hey man, I know I said I was going to offer you this much for this house, but frankly, I'm not even sure that I can offer you anything for the house. Like you'd have to give it to me. And I think of all the deals, hundreds of deals that I had ever done, that was the only one I ever backed out on. I also remember several years later, we started flipping houses in like Phoenix, in like the outskirts of Phoenix and like Gilbert and Chandler and Apache Junction, but I'm still living here in Maryland. But what we found was these crazy spreads after 2008 where like these houses were built in like 2002, 3, 4. And all they really need, and we could buy them at the courthouse steps for like 85 grand, go in and put like carpet paint, granite, and then sell them for like 180 grand, like in a week. And so we had to walk through a lot of houses to find those deals, a lot of empty houses. And I remember one day we walked into a house where it had like a 2-car garage, basically a brand new house. It was built like, 5 years prior. This guy had like a 2-car garage and a boat that must have been in his driveway. He hooked up his Ford F-150 to the boat, drove it through the wall that divides the living room from the garage, drove it through the wall and lit the entire place on fire. Just to say like, hey, oh, you're going to foreclose on me, bank? Here's your house.
Yeah.
So getting back to the marketing, it was very homespun. It was very easy. It was just a persistence and a consistency thing, right? Like you just stayed on it, never stopped, and the phone would ring. And there was no KPIs. Nobody was really like, I wasn't really like, well, how many letters do I have to send to get a lead? And how many leads do I have to do to get a deal? And, what do those deals bring in? What's my return on my investment? There was none of that back then. If you're not doing that today, you're an absolute fool because, I don't know what the average cost of a deal is if you're doing pay-per-click or if you're doing direct mail or if you're doing bandit signs or you're doing those things, but it's got to be, north of $500, maybe even closer to $1,000. And so if you're not keeping track of all of that right now, if you're really not keeping track, how do you know what your return on marketing dollar is? And how do you know, how can you go to your wife and say, hey, I'm spending $5,000 a month on marketing now, and I really like to up it to 10 because I can double my business. Well, if you don't keep track of what you're spending and really understand your return, you can't have that conversation.
Hey, you brought up some things I want to get back to. Your
Mhm.
first deal, landed you a good deal, but also more importantly, landed you a good woman.
Yes.
So her watching you go through these ebbs and flows, how was that? Was there ever stress in the relationship? Was she a rock? Was she a source of contention? How did that work?
Well, I better go get some Kleenex. Look, man, so I said at the very beginning that no one ever really taught me how to be an entrepreneur. And so when I was doing all of these flips, it wasn't a business as much as it was an art project. Like every house was like a one-off. It felt like there was no systems. I didn't sit down and get all diligent about going, okay, every house is going to get this and they'll all look like this. And frankly, if back then, if I was buying houses for 65,000 and putting 45,000 in, selling for 220, didn't matter. But I never really learned how to mechanize it and factoryize it. And then, I got introduced to coaching. My mentor in the business had a coaching company, wanted me to be like the first coach in his company. And so there was a time where my income was consistent and abundant. And it's easy to be a provider and a great husband then, and have your wife look at you like, yeah, he's got it. He understands it. But then when after the foreclosure and sort of, figuring out what I was going to do after that, and then really taking more towards coaching, never really did get back the income that I was making from flipping houses. And frankly, I was really, really good at flipping houses. Like I really figured it out. I figured out the money, figured out how to find the deals, and really figured out how to work the contractors so they weren't working me. And smart Craig would have said, hey, let me put all the distractions aside. Coaching's fun, whatever. Doing YouTube videos is fun, but like, let me really buckle down and get back to what it was that like got me to where I am today. And that was not what happened. And so, I got into coaching people in real estate, got into doing my own events, and then like that worked until it didn't work. And then I got into more like a life coaching with real estate investors, which is where I met you and a whole bunch of other people. And then that worked until it didn't work. It was working quite well until, my co-coach, my co-partner died of, he died suddenly, as they say. And so that was just a few years ago. And frankly, man, I don't know that there was ever a time where I had the same kind of traction that I did from that 2004 to 2011, 12 time period. Never really had it, was always sort of like, hey, I'm building this thing and now I'm going to build this thing. And we all get caught up in sort of like, if you're kind of like that mentality, it's fun and frenetic to be building the next thing, but you're always building. You're not running, you're not operating. Right. And I think you've been in that same boat a few times. And so getting back to answer your question. Yeah, she was amazingly supportive. Never once came to me and said, you know what, just kind of got to go get a job. Like, go get a job, dude. Never did that once until after our friend Chuck died. And I was really lost and didn't know quite what I wanted to do. Thought I could start something on my own. Didn't really have the capital, the correct capital to do it. And she did finally come to me and was like, look, it'll be time to go ask some money for a job. And that's when I went out to see my friends here at Dominion and became a loan officer here at the company. And
I think
frankly,
I think
gotta
you're
be
much more,
honest,
but yeah.
kind of like it on this side of the table. It's not the easiest job on a daily basis. It's comes with its stress as well. I mean, no one has ever closed a real estate investment loan and goes, well, that was a smooth process. Like, it's so rare. And so imagine what it's like to be on this side of the table, knowing that it's not a smooth process. Like so we do a lot of business here, man. The phone rings off the hook. And yeah, that to answer your question, she was supportive right up until the minute she knew she couldn't be. And the only way that she knew to support me was like put a foot up my butt and say, hey, man, go figure it out. And frankly, I think that a lot of people race to get out of their jobs when they find real estate because they want freedom. But I don't think I ever had freedom when I was a real estate investor. I mean, I probably should have had less I probably should have buckled down harder and really figured out the business better and became a much better operator at the business. And then freedom comes, right? But the business is hard. It's hard. And I think people they want to race to get out of their jobs, is which, kind of what you always hear from the front of the stage. But the only way you can do that is by really putting in the hard time, as a sort of young investor, as a new investor. And that takes years. That takes years before you can sit back and go, yeah, I kind of got this thing on autopilot. But during all of that time, you better have a job that like brings in money and frankly makes you more bankable. Like, it's not fun talking to people on the phone every day. And I'm like, so where's the capital for this project? You need like 100 grand. And they're like, well, I got a story, I got a little thing here. Like, I got about 30 grand. And I was like, that ain't enough. And so why did you quit your job where you were making all that money that you could have easily done this deal at that point? Like, banks don't want to talk to you if you don't have the money to do a deal. And so I don't know if that answer, I rambled on there a bit. I apologize.
So I think our stories actually parallel a lot. And I think we've had this conversation, right? We did the construction, we did the rehabs. It was great. We worked with some friends in different parts of the business.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't work out. Sometimes very difficult to have because you're separating not only a friendship in a sense, but also a business. And when those things integrate and kind of get tied in, it's hard to trigger feelings.
Yeah.
When it breaks up, whether it's rental properties, whether it's, coaching businesses, because again, we have all this. My wife has been supportive, but it's also like, okay, it's like a hobby, but it's some days I'm the big winner. Some days when I'm struggling, she is, and it's one of those ebbs and flows of relationship. How much can you really lean on each side as you're going through it?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the real life. You don't get money every day.
You mentioned partnerships. Like, I think it's really important to have someone to lean on when you're new in the business. Like, it can be pretty lonely when you go plunk down 150 grand for a crappy house and you're going to put, 80 grand into it. And probably by the end of all of that, you'll be running on fumes and not getting a whole lot of sleep. And you're really praying for that payday. And it's great when it happens. But man, that time between I'm marketing for my first and second and third and fourth and fifth and sixth deal, like I'm doing all of that when I get off work and I go home and get a quick bite to eat, take the kids out to travel, softball, or whatever the heck it is. And everybody goes to bed. Now I'm going to run down to the computer to, churn out more marketing and answer calls and get back to people. And then you find the first deal, and it's even harder because now you're trying to figure out the contracting aspect of it. And that is brutal. It's a babysitting job. It's a natural to want to have a partner in the business to lean on. Frankly, though, that partner is probably going through the same exact thing. And so how much are you really leaning on them? So I've always said after my partnerships, and I've had many, that it should be sort of a deal by deal partnership. How did that one feel? Felt great. Well, great. Let's keep on doing it. Let's do another one. Let's do another one. I don't know that I would ever want to partner in a rental. I think partners for flips are good because flips have a sort of very finite, trajectory. But a partner in a rental is a partner forever, right? Like, I'm going to buy the house. It's probably going to need some value add. We're going to get it leased up. I'm going to go to Craig Fuhr for a DSCR loan for a 30-year fixed. But I've got my buddy here next to me, and we're in the long haul for this one rental where I'm probably making somewhere between $300 to $500 a month, and I think that's cool. Probably not putting that money away. Maybe we are. Maybe we're smart. Maybe we're throwing all of the cash flow into an account and we're not touching it. Because what we didn't realize is that one vacancy, one repair, one turnover is going to wipe away all of the cash flow in that property probably for 2 years. And if you don't have it, and if you haven't figured out that part of the game, it's very, very demoralizing. You put a great property out on the market, you get a crappy tenant who pays and then doesn't pay. And now all of a sudden, all of that cash flow is gone. And possibly even like me, you're stroking a check every month out of your pocket to pay the bank on that thing rather than giving the keys back. And so I don't know that I would want to partner for a long haul on things like that. Like if I'm buying rentals, I'm probably going to do it with my spouse, and I'm going to have 20 of them free and clear by the time I retire, and I'm just pulling the cash register every month, you know? So yeah, partnerships, I think, are something that people really need to consider when they start doing real estate.
The thing, we see so many young people get into the industry, right? And what's the first thing? Oh yeah, me and my buddy, we're gonna do. Oh yeah, we're just go buy a bunch of rentals. It'll be great. We're gonna, and it's like just like you said, like you do a flip, you make a wholesale, you get a chunk of money. Great, you could have some, I could have some. This is great. But when it's like, hey, we need a new roof, we need to do a sewer lot, like, hey, time to throw in. This month didn't work out. Time to throw in. Then it's like, what if one person doesn't have it? What if one?
Not to mention, like, who's going to be that guy, right? Am I going to be the guy that has to call all the contractors and figure out how to turn over this thing? Because I'm the guy who's like flipping the house over here, and I'm the guy with the full-time job where I'm like, you know, and I've got all this stuff going on. Can't you be the guy that calls the contractor to go turn over that house? And man, that's when tensions definitely get inflamed. Like I'll tell you, like, and by the way, I know you mentioned at the beginning that I do a podcast called Real Investor Radio. You can find it at realinvestorradio.com. But I'm really blessed. We never sell on that podcast. Literally almost never talk about Dominion and me being a loan officer and, you know, what we do here. And the reason is because we just talk to these amazing guys, like these guys that are like top 0.001% in the country. Some of them have been around since 2004. Most of them have not. But what I have found is, getting back to the whole partnership thing, is all these young guys that we speak with. And talked to a guy a few weeks ago, a couple months ago, who probably still does 100 transactions a year here in Maryland. Great flipper, owns a lot of great rentals. He started off with a partner and then quickly found that, like, you know, we could probably be better off apart than we are together. Another great story. And by the way, we also interviewed his partner several months prior as well. That guy's killing it right now. Both of them are killing it. They were both straight up killers when they got in the business, figured it out, and then honestly looked at each other and said, hey man, we're way better apart than we are together. We're still great friends, and you know, we'll just sell off like the portfolio that we have because they could, and now they just operate separately and do quite well. Another great story here in Maryland, we have two very large companies in Maryland that are like industrial flex. One of them is Merit Properties. The other one is St. John's Properties. Between these two families, both privately owned companies, they probably own 10 to 12 million square feet of properties in the Baltimore metro area. Well, those two guys were partners at the beginning, Ed St. John and Leroy Merritt. Leroy Merritt was like a bricklayer. Ed St. John was like the smart guy who had access to money. They did a whole bunch of these industrial flex properties. And then we're like, I don't think we really need each other now. Like, you know, like we figured it out. Like Leroy found out how to get the money and Ed found out how to like do the contracting, and they split off and probably remain great friends until the very end. I think one of them is no longer with us, but like partnerships, man, maybe it's always got to be a partnership for when it serves both partners, but it doesn't have to be a lifetime partnership. It can be a per transaction partnership.
I like that. I also for a season, in a sense.
Exactly.
And that's where one of the things I thought was really cool when, I mean, one of my partners who, you know, like we did some deals but we didn't make it, hey, everything we do is together. It was, hey, you could do your own stuff. I could do mine. We could work together. If we work together, it looks like this. If we do something separate, it's great.
Yeah.
So I kind of like sometimes the all or none doesn't always work. Like giving some flexibility really lets people have some freedom and choose to work with somebody if they wish to.
Absolutely.
But I've also, like in recent, couple months, I know several people who've partnered, big businesses, rental portfolios that they're selling off because they're not making money off the portfolio. Some do, but some don't, right? Most of them I know don't, until they sell it 5-10 years later. Now they get a payday and they're able to cash in.
So my partner on the podcast, one of the owners here at Dominion, Jack Bevere, he always likes to say that, like, you're not making money on rentals for 10 years. And I always like, what? And he says, look, you're going to get the thing rented. It's going to be a slog. You'll make a little bit of cash flow. Hopefully that tenant will stay there for 5 to 7 years. Anything less than like 2 to 3, and you're losing money badly on every property. And then really what you're working for is the appreciation of the property, the increased cash flow as you mark to market the rents, over the next 10 years. And you get a lovely, depreciation as well on your taxes. You get to claim that. That's all great. But like 10 years is the time frame. Like if you're not in it for 10 years and you don't really understand how to become a great operator within that 10, it's always going to be a nightmare.
All right. So, Greg, one of the things that we talk about, so early this year, we did an episode on Eads Bridge, right? So Eads
What?
Bridge is here in St. Louis. It's a great episode. You should watch it.
All right.
But fundamentally, we boil it down, right? The vision America had was sea to shining sea, right? Atlantic to Pacific, all this stuff. The Mississippi River was great because it gave traffic and all this stuff, through the rivers, but it also stopped horizontal growth, right? Because you can't get over. There was ferries, and post-Civil War, there's railroads, but they couldn't get over the river. So anything would just stop. You'd have to ferry it over and then resume. Mile-long boats going this way needed to be so tall, heavy currents, all this stuff, right? So what they had to do was get their current building materials was stone, wood, and iron. Those building materials could not do the span, right? It was over a mile long. It had to be so tall, all this stuff. The big secret was he had to figure out turning iron to steel, like those forging moments. Forging moments happen on those gut-wrenching curves, right? Not the mountaintops of victories, right? It's incredible heat, incredible pressure, additives, things put in it to make it stronger, and impurities being removed.
I feel an analogy coming.
I think you see this, right? But fundamentally, there's 3 parts to this: was dream, forge, finish. But the vision of having it, forging, having those bad days actually makes your character better so you could actually achieve higher things. And then finish. A half-finished bridge doesn't get you across the river. So what is a Craig forging moment?
Oh, God.
And then what got you out of it?
I think I've already spoke of several of them. Yeah, there's always a purpose in the storm. God always gives us, I don't think that God orders the storm, but he allows it, because those are the times where you get to look in the mirror and you get to ask yourself, why am I in this storm? And yeah, man, there's so many things I could share, but I won't. But speaking from a business standpoint, it can be a very, very lonely business. And I don't care if you're in real estate, if you're just bought a laundromat, pardon me, I'm sorry, or any small business. You're wearing all the hats, and that's just a lonely time. And if you don't take a hard look at yourself and say, am I preparing myself mentally, physically, and spiritually for a time such as this, then I'm probably not going to come out on the other side. And I think that's really what I found. 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Oh my God, when did we meet? 2020-ish?
Yeah.
Right up until that time, I was probably at the least fit of my entire life. Mentally, physically, a little bit better spiritually. I was serving at a local church, really getting a lot out of it, and frankly gained a lot of this insight during that time. But I didn't look in the mirror and feel like that I was mentally and spiritually and physically fit. I don't think anyone would have looked at me and said that. And so right after our friend Chuck died, it was a real defining moment for me. I had gotten COVID right during that time, like around Thanksgiving, and I was literally bedridden for weeks. And then Chuck dies, and then we have a big event coming up in like January. And I knew that I needed to step up, not really fill Chuck's shoes. I don't know that anybody could, but I needed to be better. The walking turned into jogging. The jogging turned into a 5K like every night, and anyone could look at me and say, this is not a guy who was built for running. And then really, got the diet right and really got sharper physically and mentally. And frankly, I think it prepared me for this job that I'm in now. It's not easy, but yeah, man, I totally get it. I think that, just by the mere fact that it's a tough business, that any small business is going to be a tough business, if you're not preparing yourself really on a daily basis to withstand all the stress that comes from that and from life, being a father, being a mother, maybe working another job, just kind of scraping and surviving until the business really works out for you, I don't think that you make it out the other side. And I think that's why so many businesses fail, because people just don't know the toll that it puts on them. Just speaking of real estate, it's a tremendous toll that it puts on you initially. Like if you want to go out and do 4 or 5 flips a year and make 25, 35, $45,000 net profit on them, great. You could probably learn how to do that pretty, over the course of 3 or 4 deals and be pretty good at it. It's still very stressful. And you have to constantly prepare yourself for that. And if I'm being honest, I probably let my physical and mental side slide. I'm not as physically and mentally fit as I was just about a year and a half ago. And you have to constantly double back, and then come around the mountain one more time, get back on the horse and keep on going. So yeah, it's a great analogy. It's one that I think is very poignant for the business that we are in.
So I have to ask, you talked about God allowing the storm. How has faith woven into your life and in your business?
Man, I think when you and I were hanging out, I was much more spiritual. I was really spending time in the Word, listening to sermons, like a lot. Like I would go out on a run and just turn on a sermon or meditate or do all of those things that make us spiritually better. And I really saw the benefit in it. I think you'll recall there was a time where like I would sit down with a meditation every single night and just really get into my thoughts, get fit spiritually, mentally, really rock hard in that sense. And it doesn't take long getting away from that stuff to kind of backslide. And if I'm being really honest, I think my faith, even though I still pray every day, talk to God all the time, it's probably a different conversation these days. And I need to get back to that, if I'm being perfectly honest. Hey, can I say one thing back to the business right before we, by the way,
Sure.
I've got as much time as you want. One thing that I think that all investors should realize right now is that the distribution system for debt has changed wildly since 2018. It used to be when we got into the business, you walk down to your local bank, there's the guy there that does the real estate investor loans. You present them the deal. They've got a loan committee of like old guys that like meet in some wood room, and they only meet like twice a month. So if you go in on the 16th, you're waiting on that loan until the 30th, and you're telling the seller that you can close in 5 days. Not the case. And so that's why I think it's a better time for debt than ever for real estate investors if you have a good local hard money lender, maybe a regional guy, or maybe one of the national hard money lenders like Dominion. Like it's a one call usually to that local guy. He's probably going to charge you 12 and 3, but he's going to be one call. He's going to fund the whole thing for you. You're probably not going to make payments until the very end. You could have never gotten a deal like that with your bank. Ever. And today it's impossible. So that's sort of like the I'm going to buy and renovate. Then what do you do when you want to go to the fixed loan? Well, back in the day, it used to be I'm going to walk down to my same local bank and they're going to give me a loan that's probably going to be like a 20-year AM with like a 5-year call. So at the end of 5 years, I don't know what my payment's going to be. Maybe the interest rate will be lower. Maybe it won't. I have no idea. I'm going to roll the dice with this bank and hope that like things in 5 years turn out better. What happened was at some point, Wall Street decided that single family was an asset class, which it never was. I remember when my mentor, Steve Cook, used to say, there's a reason why flippers aren't traded, why they're not public companies. Because there's no predictability when you walk into a 100-year-old house like there is if I'm Lennar or Pulte or one of those companies and I'm just building from scratch. So, but what Wall Street understood is that we can be a distribution system for, we have the money and we just need some people to distribute the money. And that's when the nationwide lenders that everybody has heard about came in with DSCR loans. And so I think the DSCR, even though that box is tightening, it's a really important tool to understand for anybody who's doing buy and hold, Kev. Like you have to have a great DSCR lender who understands your business, who can turn it around fast for you, get the appraisal, collect some docs, and now you're moving on to the next rental, right? And so very, very important point for anyone who's doing buy and holds right now, just keep an eye on the 5-year treasury yield. It's a tough time. It's a tough time to find great deals. It's a tough time to find great deals that pencil. right? It's a tough time to go out and find a great rental where I'm going to make significant cash flow and not have to worry every month about paying the bank because rates are at like 7.5%. Once the 5-year yield, and this is my tip of the day, other than the pizza tip, the tip of the day is keep an eye on the 5-year treasury. If it goes below 4%, today it's like 3.9. Earlier this week, it was like 3.8. Man, that's a time to start refining because your rate's going to be it'll be low sevens, maybe high sixes, depending on your LTV, how much you're trying to leverage. And yeah, keep an eye on that. And once it goes below 4, there's a time to start refining your properties.
Interesting.
Anyway, I digress.
So, well, that's good information. I want to ask one final question. This is what we'll leave on. If you could give advice to either young Craig through any of those ups or downs, or to somebody out there who's struggling, or maybe they're on top of the world, right? Because you are a fabulous mentor, a fabulous coach. You're able to pour into people so well. What is like some Craig words of wisdom that you could give some of these young entrepreneurs out there, either breaking in or kind of going through their first head against the wall moment?
Well, hopefully they gleaned a lot from the stories that I've told so far. But, you know, if you have that entrepreneurial spirit, if you just know that like you're not made to work for someone for the rest of your life, there is now more YouTube videos than you can shake a stick at to learn how to learn anything that you want to learn. That's number one. It just takes an effort. It takes a constant effort to like say, hey, I'm not going to death scroll tonight. I'm going to learn about wholesaling. And there are a million wholesaling videos on YouTube. I'm going to learn how to deal with contractors, a million of those. I'm going to learn how to do direct mail marketing, a million of those. All of those resources are there. You don't have to go pay someone $50,000 in a seminar to learn how to do any of that. The second thing is that you have to really, if you have the itch, if you have the entrepreneurial itch, you got to turn it into a fire. And you got to constantly stoke that fire because the world is beating you down every single day. And if you're not mentally, physically, and spiritually prepared for that and constantly preparing yourself for that battle, you'll get beaten down. It might take a little bit longer. Maybe for some people, it's, you know, one cut and they're out of the business. Yes. Surround yourself with people who understand what you're going through. You don't have to partner with them, but at least have a couple friends who you can lean on, people that you can go back and forth with, people that you can learn from. And then finally, constantly hone yourself as an operator in the business. Every deal is not a one-off deal if you're trying to be an entrepreneur for a long haul. You're constantly saying to yourself, what did I learn on that one? How can I be better on the next one? How am I not going to run into the same hurdle on the next one? I know there'll be other hurdles, but at least I know I'm not going to have that hurdle, right? And so that would be the tips, man. Just like that's the thing, if I'm being 100% transparent, that I wish I'd have told Craig back then. And that frankly, I tell my son today. He's 19. He's studying finance and real estate at West Virginia University. And I try to tell him, surround yourself with better people. Learn as much as you can. You're not going to get out of the books in your classes what you really need to learn. Get on YouTube and learn more stuff than you're learning in your classes. And then let's set you up with some great internships at his age. That would have been, when I'm speaking to him, I'm speaking to myself. I'm speaking to 19-year-old Craig, right? And so, yeah, I think that anyone who has that spirit in them, Kev, and who really buckles down, there's nothing that stops us from succeeding but ourselves. Nothing. You have to not only believe in the dream, you have to do all of those things to achieve the dream. And that's where people trip up. They don't always do all of the things that they have to do to keep on achieving the dream.
I love it. Greg, you just underlined our three main points. The most important real estate is between your ears. Your personal drives your professional. It's all about relationships. I totally get what you're talking about. I got 2 high schoolers, and it's one of those like, get up, start doing it. Go, get a business. Like, let's build something. Let's go.
Yeah.
And Cammie, my wife, is like, Kevin, were you doing that at that age? Were you? Like, they like to sleep in. They're hanging out with their friends. Like,
Yeah.
go.
It's like telling them not to do drugs. Like I started doing that when they were babies, and you just keep on reinforcing that message. And at some point, maybe they'll get it. Like, thankfully, they got the whole no drugs thing. But yeah, as you know, my little entrepreneur, I have to be like constantly reinforcing the message and saying, hey, these are the words that I wish my father would have told me, but he wasn't that guy. I'm going to be that guy. I always find, Kev, that why is it that like there is a legacy of doctors in a family, or I've got, I'm an Orioles guy. We got Jackson Holiday on our team, and his father played baseball, and his brother is now going to be the number one pick. Why? Because the father was that guy who planted the seed and then watered the seed and watched it sprout, and it probably wilted every now and again, and he was pissed at them because they weren't working hard, or the doctor who knew his son could be a surgeon one day, and it's that constant reinforcement of message that I don't think you'll get if you don't have someone in your house who's been through it. You better surround yourself with people who have been through it.
Love it. Yeah. Love it. Craig, thanks again so much for being on. Great to have you. Good luck to everything that you do. And obviously people can reach you at Dominion, or they can listen to you at the Real Investor Radio.
realinvestorradio.com, and you can reach me at Craig at the dominiongroup.com. And by the way, I just want to say this, Kev, not selling here. I still love talking shop with investors. I love it. I love when I get investors who call me. They're like, I've done 5 deals, really want to scale, don't quite know how to get there. Even if I never do a loan with them, it's the most enlightening and best conversation of the day. Still love talking shop with investors. So please feel free to reach out.
It's because you are a great mentor and a coach, right?
Thanks for having me.
You just do it through a different medium now. Dude, thank you. Talk about a lot of wisdom that comes out of that conversation. Let me pull out my little remarkable here. So I take some notes on this thing. I love it. I don't have to use paper as much. But so he started the Real Estate Investor Radio. So that's fantastic. Go check that out if you haven't. He had early success. And did you notice because of that, he got a good chunk of money, right? But also he won the girl, right? But then what he found early with that success was now his partner, his father-in-law, kept looking for that same deal every time. Well, why don't we have that deal? Why don't we, so once you have a home run, it's hard to just think about singles and doubles sometimes. And he had to go out and search out for some more lenders, right? People who had an appetite for still doing deals and kind of growing. Listening to his thing, evolving with partnerships and relationships and kind of looking back, hey, I would have done this, I would do this, all the pros and cons. I hope you guys really picked up on that. Also, how much he underlined our principles, right? Most important, real estate is between your ears, your personal drives your professional, and it's all about relationships. So much of what he talks about, I don't know if he talked about it on this as much. Part of his coaching talks about running up hills. And it's just one of those, sometimes you got to do the hard stuff. And there's a grind, especially when we get started. There's a grind to getting that business up and running. And then the PTSD that comes up when some bad stuff happens. It stays with you sometimes if you don't learn how to process or deal with it. Let's look at some of the wisdom that he gave us. So one, becoming a better operator. And he said that there's 3 ways that this happens, right? Capital, deals, and contractors. So the fact that you need to become and continue becoming better operators, right? Business owners. You can either do better on the money side, capital, right? Find better deals or more deals, or contractors, basically all the stuff in the middle that helps get you from A to C. So that's great. The fact, oh my gosh, he bought these big houses, right? The multifamilies. I think he said it was 3 families or 3 4 families that were on the news for a triple murder in the front. I mean, dang! I don't have that one under my belt, but I could see where that kind of burns you a little bit. Love to talk about, so we call it forging moments, right? But he was calling it the storm. But sometimes those storms God allows, but that's also where it develops your character, but also wisdom and also courage to keep moving even when it's tough. I loved how he kind of wrapped up on some of that, but you got to turn that itch, that entrepreneur itch, into a fire. And when you do that, you also need to make sure you keep yourself surrounded by good people. So we have the tribe. We do these masterminds. We kind of build a community online and in conversations. So guys, if you're not part of that, jump on. We love you guys. Thanks for being here. Hey guys, it's Kevin. I just want to say thanks for listening to our episode. We can't do all this without our sponsors. We have some amazing sponsors. We got Jason Hudson with Red Maples Construction. He does all my general contracting when I go out and do my flips. We got Lois Mans with Farmers Insurance. She covers my assets and she's been doing it for many, many years. So highly thankful for her. Greg Mann's Upright Construction. So all the stuff outside. So roofs, gutters, fascias, siding, that's all Greg's world. He does a great job for me and all the stuff we do. Peter and Tom over at Essex Mortgage. They're the guys that go out there and sometimes give me the extra money or refi me with the DSCR loans or any of those processes on the back end. So they help me with the money concept. And then also just have to mention Adam Droege and the CRS team, Complete Realty Services. They do the property management, and they also help get the tenants and make sure that all those assets are running smoothly. So guys, thank you to our sponsors and everything you do for us.